Welcome to the Journos. This week our special guest is Michael Gannon from the Daily Record. Alison McConnell and Tam Cowan are with me, Peter Martin. Thank you very much for your company, and thank you to everyone who's been listening in the podcast and of course on our YouTube channel. If you hit the subscribe button you can join the football family, and if you download the app you'll get all the breaking news at your fingertips as well as unique video content. So this week we're going to get our teeth into top Christmas sports games ever. I had a few in mind that I thought would take us back in time, Tam, and maybe test Michael if he got anything for Christmas, and also and then obviously, you know, once you move from working class to middle class, we'll find out what Ali got for Christmas as well, as we, you know, those houses where you looked in and you just thought, oh, I wish I had that.
I know.
And we'll also talk about great players not necessarily making great managers off the back of Duncan Ferguson as the new Inverness Caledonian Thistle manager. It certainly came out of left field. Does he have the qualities? Has he got a track record? Is it playing off his name as a player? We'll discuss that, as well as Ange Ball. They're falling in love with him. Everything he does, every word that comes out of his mouth. Down south they love the Tottenham manager, but is he playing football so different from anyone else? And we'll look back at some of the visionaries who moved our game on to another level. And we'll also discuss the new Champions League format, because it has huge implications for the champions of Scotland going into it next season. Certainly financially, rich rewards on offer. I thought we'd start light-hearted, just because obviously there's that look of fear sometimes when we have a special guest and they realise we're talking about issues that could do your head in. So
or get you cancelled.
Yes, absolutely. So I thought to myself, I'll kind of ease us into it. Sports games, you know, it's incredible because obviously the big one, the talking point at the moment is that FIFA, which is a huge sports game, is changing the brand and the name, and they reckon if you change the name, you're in danger of maybe alienating your audience, and, you know, it could actually drop the sales. And it brought to mind to me, wow, sports games, what were the games that I loved when I was a kid? You know, that we got top five. I've given you five. See if you can come up with some others, Tam. Yeah. Subbuteo was massive. You know, my mum cut out a solid cardboard and then stuck the green felt on it and then laid it out on the floor, which was brilliant until my sister stood on my Dundee United players.
I stood in my brother's Maradona.
Did you? Well, that's outrageous.
My mate Gary's cat was rushed to the vet after swallowing one of the wee men.
Oh, yeah.
That was that dangerous. Cats said just go for stuff like that, you know. That's I'm getting flashbacks here.
Yeah,
this is awful.
Were you a Subbuteo man, Michael?
Oh, very much so, yeah. In fact, I remember my brother and I playing Subbuteo when a fight breaking out. My dad ran in to smack the two of us and ran across the whole pitch. I broke every single player in the park. Everyone was in tears. I didn't even be smacked.
That's when you knew when the pals had money, because if you were lucky enough just to get the bit looked like you've ripped it off a snooker table, the bit of beige, right? That was one thing. But you knew the pals that had money when they had like the floodlights.
Oh, the stands.
The stand with the people in it, yeah. I had...
you know, like Striker was better though.
Super Striker.
And you had the heat and it kicked the ball. That was much better than all that. That was shove halfpenny. Subbuteo.
I wish I'd kept Super Striker because, as you know, Michael, it's a lucrative game now. I mean, anyone who's got a 1977 Luke Skywalker is in for a few quid. But, you know, if you had Super Striker or the original Subbuteo, people pay lots of money.
eBay quids in, yeah. Unfortunately, mine was all trash from my dad kicking lumps at them.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. That Skywalker went as well. You went the same way.
I wasn't. I didn't actually buy any of the Star Wars gear, but nevertheless, Subbuteo, Super Striker. Ali, do you want to add to it? Can you think of anything?
I remember one year we got table tennis bats and a net that you could like redesign your kitchen table, so you put the net across the table and various ornaments smashed in our house.
You had a kitchen table?
You in the kitchen?
The poverty we grew up with.
Just about to say. That's fantastic. And room to take your backhand. I get that. I mean, listen, it's funny you saying that, because there's some kids now who actually get the table tennis table.
I know.
And they can play it no problem, and they look at you as if you're completely and utterly insane.
I remember one year my brother getting a snooker table. My brother got a snooker table, and trying to do a trick shot, he put the ball through the front window.
Right, what was the purpose of the trick shot? Was that part of it? No.
All I remember is the wee hole in the front window. And just thinking, oh.
That was another one, frankly, because you used to get bring it back to memories now, but when your mum would get the big Christmas catalogue delivered. Now, honestly, leaving all the pervy stuff aside, you went straight to the toys, and you would always see just what looked like a great 6x3 snooker table. But it was way out. You'd look at the price, you'd think, £199 or something.
Can I just say something to you? Because, as you know, I come from a huge family, Michael. This is how poor we were. We used to have a game where we'd all sit around the catalogue, and you were allowed one choice on each page, and you got bags that, and then bags that. You were never
explain that year you get the girdle. You still got it?
Still got it. It's on eBay. But we never got them. You were just you carried on. You were picking them.
Indulging your fantasies.
Yeah, absolutely. You never got the chance. Anyway, Nintendo Wii was another one when it broke the boundaries.
Whoa. Can we see your birth certificate? Is that Nintendo Wii? What was when you were a kid?
No, but I'm just saying it's not just
a Spectrum ZX.
I'm giving you a generation and a generation.
A Gurdon Clique. Jumping one in it.
Sorry, was one of one, yeah.
Do you have a Gurdon Clique? Alison, my dad used to bring them home for Honeywells. There was some guy that made them. It was basically a metal ring. With a kind of metal stick almost like attached to it to keep it running.
Right.
Simple pleasure.
That was something from the 1930s. You've seen that in the telly or something.
No, it was a guy at my dad's work made them.
Tam thinks we're not allowed to mention any modern games that kids of a certain
Victorian
generation.
I think it was.
He was actually really good fun when it first came out, like all the boxing and the tennis. It was like the kind of first almost VR games, like you're running about the living room chasing an imaginary ball.
I know the tennis one was great. John Madden broke new ground in the NFL one, but the one that really stuck in my mind, I mean, somebody mentioned Tony Hawk's Pro Skateboarder, which is a massive game, but the one that I remember was Rock'em Sock'em, the two robotic boxers, which was fantastic.
That era, that was that. For a football sense, I'm sure. What age are you, Michael?
Well, I'm 44. I'm 80s child. So I remember what you were saying about the catalogue and the sports section, the fishing gear and all that. And they brought in the 80s. They brought in the goalie gloves, proper goalie gloves. And I remember circling a pair of Sondico goalie gloves, the big padded ones and all that. Santa's bringing a pair of these bad boys up with and go. And Christmas morning, opened up the present, and it was the woolly ones with the rubber. Sewed on. And my heart was broke. What have you done to me, Santa?
Well, my mate, 2 doors up for his Scott, he got the Peter Barnes ball. And you were meant to, it was attached, there was a string, elastic kind of thing attached, and you put it on your jeans or whatever, or on your belt, and it was a dead lightweight ball, but it was meant to help you practice your keepy uppies and that, so the ball wouldn't go away down the street or anything like that, but it was, that was a sensational Christmas gift.
Peter Barnes, he was a great player actually. I think he was at Man City.
Man City's what I remember him for.
West Brom. That was the other club he was at,
I'll tell you one, it's not to do with football, which I found it when we were, don't want to change the mood, but when we were clearing out my mum's house. When we were clearing out, and I thought, and then with almost tears running down my face, and I had to have a wee shot at it there and then. And I'm honest, I must have been about an hour I was playing with it, because what I found, and it was in great nick, and I'm keeping you in suspense here, and somebody later told me that if I had the original box for it, that's always crucial if you're looking to get some money for old toys. He says I could have easily got about $2,000 on eBay, and it was the Evel Knievel cycle. It was immaculate. Whatever it had been in this cupboard, there wasn't a bit of dust even on it, and boy, and see, because we just I couldn't mind them, we were just lifting stuff and putting out rubbish and but I sat I was back to being a wee boy. I was in my old room, and I'd set up some old Daniels, the Beanos and their Willies and that to make a ramp, and it was tremendous.
Got it?
I gave it to my nephew.
Wow, never held on to it. And the painful thing as we move on is I wish with every sinew of my body that Michael had those Sondiko gloves, because playing with him at the Scottish Football Writers and watching him drop the ball on 2 occasions, which cost us in one game, it could have changed the whole our whole record historically. But that's another.
This is like the guy that builds the whole town, and all that stuff, and you bother one sheep. I mean, one bad game in 15 years.
Absolutely.
I forgot it.
I know. Well, to be fair, it was so crucial. Anyway,
you maybe point out to viewers at this point my way that it's no December. There might be a few folks talking about Christmas and toys.
Well, I was just thinking, the only reason it prompted, I thought, we'll start off on a more light-hearted note, because we usually get in heavy, is the fact that FIFA has changed the brand, and it's changing it in the EA Sports, and they were saying it could cost them millions, and I'm thinking,
I have
really?
to say though, I've got my son, they all knew about it. I think just because there's a culture of it comes out every year at the same time. All the kids were all talking in the build up to its release last Friday that it's coming out, and whether the fact that it had a new name didn't seem to affect any of the clamour to get it and to get the new one. And every year I think, like, you're forking out all this money for a game that's essentially is the same as last year's game with a few different features in it, but it didn't seem to have dampened down any fervour for all the kids to get it.
It's big business, let me tell you. This next section, jobs for the boys, just prompted by obviously the arrival, Michael, of Duncan Ferguson. There's no logic to football. I really do wish Duncan Ferguson all the very best at Inverness. If you listen to the board, he's got a great structure and a great club with a great vision coming up, and he's got a decent squad that he's inherited, apparently. The proof is in the pudding, but he goes into it with not a great track record. No,
not as a manager. I think people you speak to in the game, I think he had a really good time at Goodison as a coach, really well respected. A couple of good caretaker spells as well, didn't he, when he was quite close to getting the job on a full-time basis. I think Carlo Ancelotti was keen on taking him out to Spain, wasn't it, at one point? Rated him so highly. Yeah. So he's got a bit about him as a coach, I think. He went to Forest Green, I think he won one game in 18 there, and they went down. They were on the slide when they went there. Slightly strange kind of club, Forest Green, sometimes a bit wacky sometimes, aren't they?
Yeah.
For a guy like Dunk, who maybe is a proper football guy and all that stuff. But fair play to him. Listen, it's a bold move from Inverness and from Ferguson. And you just get the feeling it's going to be one of these positions that could be either a spectacular success or a complete and utter disaster.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's going to be anywhere in between there. But I mean, this season, I hope they get him time. I hope they get him time to stabilise this season and maybe push towards the kind of playoffs. That'd be okay. I know they're desperate to get up. I mean, they're absolutely desperate to get back to the top flight. But if they can get into the playoffs and make a good fist of it this year, plenty of time. It's only September. But if they give him time to do the job properly, I hope he gets it. It could be a success. I think it's really interesting. I mean, it's box office, isn't it?
It is box office only. I mean, I'm not being unbelievably cynical about it. He's 51. It's very late. He's been the assistant, the coach in the background without that responsibility. So he comes into it now in a job where he didn't have a great track record. And I buy into what Michael's saying about Forest Green. But he's got a 3-year deal and the game's changed. And the other element of it, which he is going to have to face, which is something which is very difficult, which every manager I speak to who manages the Highland clubs, he's going to have to work with what he's got, and then when he has to hit the transfer windows, try and coax people to come up to Inverness, and you know, Malky Mackay has the same problem at Dingwall, trying to convince them, come up here and embrace the culture, and you're isolated, that's you, you're there.
I was very cynical about it when I heard it. I thought it seemed a wee bit like a publicity stunt, just like you're bringing someone in that you know is box office, that you know that there's going to be a bit of attention on it. It's going to invite people up. You know, there's a curiosity there about how he gets on. He's also opinionated, notoriously opinionated. You're thinking if you're going up to cover a press conference, you know you're going to get a line. I don't know that there was a lot of substance behind the appointment for a managerial appointment. I think his coaching record is very good. I think he's very well thought of as a coach. But I think every appointment, obviously, you could argue is a gamble. But I think this one in particular, and I think a 3-year deal was interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, you know, if you look at the previous incumbent in Billy Dodds, football tells you now, it doesn't matter what you win, how high you go, playoffs, getting to a Scottish Cup final, it counts for nothing if you start with a really bad run. And unfortunately for Billy, you know, he'd a really bad run that the board decided no, for the squad, and this was their quote, for the squad he has at his disposal, they felt as if he should have got more out of him.
He maybe in some ways made a rod for his own back with that, Billy, because certainly at the start of last season, he was saying that there was a lot of guys who were injured that he was desperate to get back, and he says the form will improve when we get them back, and it did. They had a cracking second half of the season last year, but now that he did have his whole squad of players back, sitting bottom of the league, and as much as they'd put a dent into that enormous debt last year with their exploits, particularly in the Cup, of course, when you could argue it was courtesy of a secretary at Queen's Park or whoever was responsible for the wee error and the paperwork, but that did eat into a lot of the debt, but they're still in debt. You get the feeling that Inverness, correct me if I'm wrong, but I reckon yet again this season they'll have budgeted for getting up. I mean, they don't want to linger in the Championship, but there's a few clubs in that exact same boat, of course, this year, most notably Dundee United, who you reckon they've chucked, haven't it? So it'll be a fascinating league, but I agree with Michael what he said about coaching. I mean, if you look at Steve Clarke, there's a lot of folk, if you think, what did Steve Clarke do ever since he hung up the boots and that? But a lot of his best work was under the radar because he was always a coach, more so than a manager in his own right, of course. And if Duncan is such a highly respected coach, and you get the wee bit of showbiz, and you maybe get the element, there's this great thing that, you know, MD supports Inverness or Ross County, and certainly folk within the clubs, I've heard them saying it to my face, they always think that the media is so Glasgow centric, you know, and they always say that, they're wanting them to be out the top flight so they don't need to travel that distance and da. This'll certainly lure folk.
Sure, by the way.
Well, anyone who's afraid to eat Johnny Foxes, I can tell you that's absolutely not true.
Yeah, but I look at the two of them and I think, wow, barefaced liars, the two of them.
I've heard that many times. I'm like, no, little do you know.
By the way, they two are lying now only due to the fact now that you don't get the rate per mile that you used to get.
Overnight stays are a bit more fun in the ground these days, unfortunately.
But I just think if that lures some folk up there, which it will. I mean, even I thought it was great, and I must say as well, the one night, and I remember telling you about this, that I spent in his company. I think there'll be plenty of fun times ahead, because that was the night I did with him at the Whitehall Theatre in Dundee, and it was absolutely amazing. I mean, his whole story about when he thought he had basically killed the guy that broke into his house, one of two such incidents. But and then it was just that way that he said, I thought I'd killed the guy, Tam. He says, I phoned my brother-in-law, and he says, you know my brother-in-law, don't you? I said, no, it's in front of the audience. John Parrott, snooker player. And I'm like, so they continue to tell that story where John Parrott came round to his house, and then Duncan basically revealed to his brother that he thinks that the guy in the carpet there is dead, and John Parrott's maybe hinting his own kind of standing in the world, and I think I shouldn't really be caught here. So before you know it, John Parrott's out the back window and down the drain pipe and away, Liam Duncan. Turns out the guy was okay, but in terms of, and here's a wee warning for the Inverness players, of course, forget things like Alec Ferguson and hairdryers. The guy that Duncan gave a doing to, who he thought was dead, the good bit is that he get 3 years in jail, and the slightly, let's put a serious face on, he also spent the first 3 months of that in hospital. So I would imagine the Inverness players might not be too keen in crossing their new manager.
Or breaking his house.
Yeah, that's probably a more pertinent point. Let's not break into Big Dunk's house while he's up here. The other aspect of it is you've got to say to yourself, okay, you know, you want him to do well. He was a great player. I wonder if he's got, as well as trying to get the players and get the best out of them, and whatever coaching skills he does have, Michael, he's going to have to try and go on a run and get them out of a league which is not synonymous with great football. You've got to work out a way to scrap, and I think that might work in his favour, because he's not one of these, what I would suggest to you, he's not one of these football purists who thinks, well, plan A is we're going to play out from the back and we're going to play lovely little triangles. This is a guy who made his living holding the ball up, bringing the midfielders into play, and he was fearsome in the box.
But we don't really know if that's going to be the case. I mean, there's guys in the past, I mean, Big Yogi, Big John Hughes, a big rough defender, loves his team's passing at the back and playing football and all that stuff.
Great
So
point.
it might well be that he likes to play football. I'll agree with you about the Championship, and that's a cooting busting league, isn't it? I mean, notoriously difficult to predict that league. So you will have to kind of get it back, strip it back to basics and get results. But it'd be really interesting, I think, to see what his what's it they say, his ethos and his philosophy is and all that stuff these days.
That'd be great. It's an exciting book.
But Ali,
he's only back in Scotland for about 20 odd years working. The last time he left Rangers in 94.
Yeah.
It was the last time he played for Scotland, 96, 97 maybe.
I can still see the overhead kick against Germany.
He's not been back in this country for nearly 30 years.
If you look at the people that may well have left an impression on him, he's worked under Walter Smith, which he was glowing in his praise of him at the press conference. Rafa Benitez, Carlo Ancelotti, Roberto Martinez, Ronald Koeman. I mean, the list goes on.
It's a who's who.
It really is, but and you're right, Michael, I don't know what his philosophy and the strong DNA of the way he's going to want his team to play. I would suggest to you that if my instinct tells me that he's going to know that they're going to have to battle, and he'll be looking for maybe not son of Duncan, but something along the lines of let's play in the channels, let's try and, yes, high press, but not silky football to get Inverness out of where they are.
Ultimately, it comes down to winning. It's what every manager is judged on. It doesn't matter what his methodology is or his philosophy is, it needs to be successful. It's the same for everyone. That's your blueprint. You have to go get results. You need to get them up and challenging. Minimum, you would say, is to be up and challenging at the top end of the table and pushing for promotion.
Yeah, and of course,
as you say, also in the gamble, I personally think it will work out. But if it doesn't work out, they're at the foot of the table now, and suddenly they're looking south, and they're looking about League One. If he can't pick them up, if he can't get results,
especially when you think you've paid a fairly decent contract to someone to come up and get them out of it. If you're going to drop down another league, it's financial ruin. It really could be hugely serious for them.
And the first game at the weekend is at Arbroath, who have been in a cracking run. Of course, that'll be fascinating. The very idea of Dick Campbell and Duncan Ferguson, that's box office. It's absolute box office.
That's the danger in that Championship, because teams have found in the past that you can fall through that trapdoor in League One.
They've got two crucial games coming up, Michael. I mean, they're not detached from Morton, so they've still got Morton within striking distance. A long way to go, but you're looking at Arbroath, then they've got Partick at home, and then you've got Morton away, and then Airdrieonians and Dundee United. So it's a tough month ahead and a good baptism for him, and I'm really going to be. I'll be watching to see what his instruction is.
There's a key point. You're talking about it. You're talking about it just now, and you're watching with a bit of interest. Would you have been previously? You might have been giving it a glance and saying, "Oh, Inverness are in trouble." But the fact that you're discussing it, the fact that you're analysing what the next month is like, suggests to you that there's a level of intrigue there that wasn't there.
And the other key thing about it, which takes you back to the point that you were making, Ali, about being slightly cynical about these things, I'm looking at him saying, okay, I understand his record as a player, and to be honest with you, his career was dogged by injury as well, but when he was fit, he was fearsome for Everton especially, and to a lesser extent, I think the Geordies liked him at Newcastle. Great players don't necessarily make great managers, to be perfectly honest with you. It's littered with it down through the years. I give you a couple of names that might be argued. One of them is unquestionably in that same mould was Solskjaer. I mean, Solskjaer had a dreadful record at Cardiff, and then suddenly, because of his reputation and that wonder goal in the European Cup final, he goes in and gets one of the top jobs in the world.
Yeah. Well, famously, like Diego Maradona and all that stuff, isn't he? One of the best players of all time, manager. Don't know.
Yeah.
John Barnes.
Well, the funny thing is, and this is I've got an interesting argument on this one for John Barnes, where I can remember that period where, as a reporter at the end of the games, standing interviewing for television, there was a real obsession, especially I think a real kind of an attitude of let's cane him for the way he's setting up his side in the written press. He got absolute torrents of abuse, and he get really frustrated, and you could tell every time I was interviewing him at the end of a game, he get incredibly miffed by people's obsession with the way he was lining up the team. The biggest problem he had, and I wonder about it, Michael, is when Henrik Larsson breaks his leg, he's done. I mean, he's just absolutely done for. And the reason I say that is Gordon Strachan, I remember, I was out for lunch with him one day, said to me, managers are all about players. If you've got players that can suddenly turn a game for you, he says, Steve Clark, West Brom manager, everybody's talking about him becoming the next Chelsea manager. Romelu Lukaku is on loan, scoring goals for fun. Romelu Lukaku is back to his parent club. 6 months later, Steve Clark's sacked. Do you know what I mean? I think John Barnes really.
They're hostages of fate, aren't they? Some managers. But,
and I thought he was unlucky, and I don't know. It's a great argument. He says he was a great player, but there is definitely an argument with John Barnes to say, you know, wait a minute here, have a look at the bigger picture. I don't know why he didn't go on to try and manage somebody else.
It must be hard if you're like a really top player, I mean one of the best and all that stuff, and you're taking a team that's maybe nowhere near your ability.
Yeah.
I saw a wee clip this week, it was Glenn Hoddle teaching somebody to shoot. Like if your guy's hoofing it on the bar and all that stuff, Hoddle's bending at the top corner, says, just take a touch and put it in the top corner, and the guy's like that. It's Glenn Hoddle.
Actually reading a thing with Glenn Hoddle, and he was saying that, like, you forget that what you do instinctively and what you do automatically, you can't actually articulate it to people how you do it. So when you come to coach, you get really frustrated quickly because you can't. They're not at your level. It's a really interesting interview where he's just saying, I don't know why I can do it, but I'm annoyed that you can't.
But by the way, if you look at Zinedine Zidane, his record at Real Madrid is phenomenal.
3 European Cups, didn't he?
Do you know what I mean? I mean, absolutely phenomenal. And some people say, well, wait a minute, he's at Real Madrid, for God's sake, he's the world's best players. But some of the world's most expensive players who are highly rated are at Chelsea and making a pig's ear of it. It doesn't necessarily go hand in hand. I think that man management skill about it is still a big part of football, despite the fact that we are obsessed by, you know, the way a manager plays that purist football.
Who do you think then, pound for pound or medal for medal as the case may be, who would be the top player, World Cup star, whatever, who just did not hack it as a manager? Who would be the best example? What do you reckon?
Well, Roy Keane couldn't cut it.
Roy Keane was one, yeah.
I mean, he just didn't go for him.
I was laughing at Ozzy Ardiles, because Ozzy Ardiles applied for every job in Britain for about 10 years solid. I worked in Wales and England and up north in Scotland, and honestly, I covered about 25 clubs, and every single club would be a call saying something from the behind the scenes, well, Ozzy Ardiles applied for it. And I was like, I think Morrison's looking for a new manager and applied for that as well.
Yeah.
And it was just like, and I remember phoning him a couple of times, so he says, oh yes, Newport County are a great club and all that stuff, I loved it, and the conference and all that stuff.
But to be fair,
he's a phenomenal player, manager, not so much.
Well, I loved his Tottenham side though. Yeah. Because the one thing that Ali hates, and this is the one thing she hates, is Ali likes this. 2 goals in the first minute, and that's the game.
He likes that as well.
The 2 goals have decided this game. There's no way back for the other team. Ozzy Ardiles, they're 4-0 down. Oh my God, they've won 5-4. Change your top line. It's the nightmare.
Not for me. I'm the exact same. So Scotland against Cyprus every time for me. Half time, feet up, cigars out.
I'll throw in Stevie Hamill as well. Well, for a wee Motherwell angle.
But it's like that. I mean, I actually sat down one night. I mean, it was the St Johnstone game at Fir Park, and Stevie came in, and I mean, I just such a lot of time for him. I just thought he was a great lad, and I was willing him to do well.
I know.
But he looked like a boy haunted because he'd exhausted every angle of his mind to try and get something out of the players. Couldn't do it.
See, there's another argument for you to chuck in a name, but managers who you really, really hoped would do well and they didn't. Now, for me at Motherwell, because you grew up watching him, he never played for Motherwell, but you thought he's a class act. Great with his club, great with Scotland. Maurice Malpas, right? And you thought that guy's just, you know, one of these ever presents for Dundee United. Wasn't he a guy, you know, I'm getting all raising an eyebrow here or then, but he was never a guy that we saw on the front page of the papers or anything like that. Total professional, great guy. But when he was a manager at Motherwell, it was awful. You know, it didn't work out, and he's the one guy who thought, I really wish he could have cracked it, you know.
Yeah.
A real shame, but you know, there must be a lot of guys.
He's a great number 2 right now.
A
really good number 2. I mean,
I'll tell you one.
The great success with Big Terry and all that stuff up there.
Yeah, he was always looked as a number 2. There are managers or people who fit into that category who can't make the jump up. Interestingly enough, there is one guy that maybe slightly biased because I know him so well, that I always wanted to become the manager of Dundee United was Jim McInally. And Jim McInally was at Peterhead where he had Rory McAllister, who just belted in 30 goals a season.
Yeah.
If you get 30 goals a season at that level, you're in the running for winning the titles. And he also had something which I think Duncan Ferguson's going to need, and they're going to have to display this. You have to have an understanding board that's got a club that's run well, because there are people who start out in their management and they could have become good managers, but suddenly maybe Forest Green's the exact evidence of why it didn't work out for Duncan. Sometimes you need all the stars to align. Yes, we're going to give you time. We'll try and give you the backing, and you get the time to utilise the skills of all the coaching lessons and all the experience you had as a player.
I think Duncan in particular, getting somebody on board alongside him who knows the environment would be important. I know he's got a few pals that are still kicking about the scene up here. If he can get one of them involved, because the Championship is cutthroat, and you need to know what when you look at the guys that are successful. Dick Campbell, great example, knows it inside out. They need to have somebody alongside him, I think, who knows the kind of what to expect up here, and that would help him, I think, as well.
Yeah. So the thing is, if he doesn't, where the panic would come in if you were an Inverness fan, if he doesn't get off to a good start, because he hasn't been a manager, but he's apart from obviously the Forest Green, where it didn't work out, but because all his best work was done coaching, if he gets off to a poor start, it's not as if the board then could turn around and say, but that happened at such and such a club. He was just warming up, and then he became, they've not got anything like that to fall back on.
Yeah.
So it's a very, very bold move, but it's fascinating. It's going to be great.
Yeah, absolutely. And listen, we wish him well, and hope that he is able to get the time to implement his own style. And of course, the other thing, I think it's going to become a catchphrase now. I wonder how many transfer windows he will get. Will he get the old Lee Johnson? I'm looking for 5. And might end up with 3, but only time will tell. We'll see what standard and style of player that he buys as well. But nevertheless, there are a few, and I'm sure you can add to them as well on our feed, on our YouTube channel, and right across our social media. Great players that didn't make it as managers. Have you got a few in mind? Drop them in the comments in the section below, and we'll discuss them at a later date on the Journos programme. Hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel. Hopefully you're enjoying the chat. Michael Gannon's with us from the Daily Record, the Journos, every week discussing things domestically and across Europe and maybe globally as well. And with that in mind, it takes us nicely on to the fact that everybody's in love with Ange Postecoglou. I mean, if Ange Postecoglou suddenly released a soup, people would buy it. Because, I'm waiting on it. Hi, are you having trouble with your hair? The Ange Postecoglou jumper, which would go down a storm. I don't know about you, but I saw him in the middle of the park with Sky Sports, and he had a shirt and tie on, and I thought, he hates that. He doesn't like wearing shirts and ties.
It's interesting. I think sometimes that first season, when you see a real charm offensive by managers, and Michael, agree with me here, we've lived through first and second seasons. When first season, when people are won over, your second season you can let the mask slip a bit. But I think much of what you're seeing from him just now, and the stories we're hearing just now, are things that we would have been privy to when Ange first came in. I think not to do him a disservice, I think though in some ways it'll be a breath of fresh air to people. I think there's an authenticity to him. I don't think there's anything manufactured about him. I don't think he comes across as a corporate guy. I think you get an opinion, and I think you get a sense of who he is, which I don't think you almost maybe get down in the Premier League when you're surrounded by so many PR staff, and advice and questions can be fairly dry. I think he does give something of himself. I think you get a sense of who he is, and I think he's prepared to give you a kind of look behind the veil. Yeah,
he also has that personality. I mean, thoroughly likeable man, but he has that personality and what I would again go back to in a DNA of where he was brought up in Australia, where it's no nonsense. They cut the crap. I mean, as soon as somebody starts saying something, just ridiculous, he'll just quickly shoot it down.
Yeah.
So he's not one of those people that you can lay a trap for, because you can see it.
Cool.
Very, very much so. I must admit, I'm finding it quite funny hearing all the greatest hits rolled out down at Spurs.
Yes.
And it was like, this sounds all very familiar, all this kind of stuff. I'm hearing all the same things over and over again.
Do you like this?
Driving Puskis, taxi driving for Puskis and all that stuff.
Many spreads of it.
I must admit, this is all ringing a bell.
See all this? The badge and everything of the fans.
But, it's easier when you're winning.
It's 4 wins and 2 draws in the league. They're 4th in the league. My God, calm down.
When you go through a difficult spell, you'll hear a few more mates.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. I did say to him, she's laughing because I did say to him, Tam, when I had the good fortune to sit down with him at a number of functions, I did say to him, look, I've got to ask you a question. I said, all the boys in the press, I've said to them all that if anybody asks you a question and you say mate within the first 2 or 3 words of your answer, it's because you think he's a prick.
Right. I got a few of them through the year.
And he turned around to me and he went, yeah mate. So he said more than a few.
I think if I was a Celtic fan, my nose would be slightly out of joint now, because I think there's a lot of folk down south, and I include guys in the media and that who think, oh, who's this Ange Postecoglou? They're reacting as if the guy has just arrived for Australia rather than come down the road for Glasgow, you know what I mean? It's
but that's a disdain.
I know, well that's for our game up here, you know, but he seems to be doing exactly the same thing, and I must admit, knowing what the football was like under him, I actually watched the Rangers Motherwell game and at the BBC last weekend, and it was on almost at the same time as the Spurs Arsenal game, Arsenal Spurs, and never in my wildest dreams did I think that my eyes would be distracted by an English game when I'm sitting watching Motherwell, you know, but it was like a basketball game at times, you know, and you thought, this is the sort of the Postecoglou football that you obviously remember for up here. So I mean, the Spurs fans, you know, the great pressure on him though, maybe now, because he has got after a flyer. And then how many places do you get for the Champions League now? 4 south. 4. Yeah. So before you know it, they'll be saying, well, we'll be looking for that at least.
Yeah. The other thing about him is, you know, and this is when you've got to take a step back when they get just over the top. You know, there are many people down there who infuriate you because they think that football only started at the dawn of Sky Sports covering the new Premier League. And then there's this whole thing that a lot of people are talking about. Oh my God, he's playing with the high press with inverted fullbacks. This is unbelievable. We've never seen this. He's passing out from the back as well. It's incredible football. I mean, geez, peace, Michael. You know, I mean, he at times I watch the Arsenal game and I'm thinking, this is hear him, scare him.
High risk, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. But not only that, really good teams will spank them if they keep that going. He's going to, you've got to vary it.
I think. I think there's a wee bit of mythology around him sometimes, because this kind of, it's all attack all the time. It's not. He knows how to play. He knows how. He done it. Went to Ibrox and they won it there and they shut the game down. He had done it in some European games at Celtic as well. He knows. He does know how to manage a game. Just he likes to go forward and attack.
It's great to watch, but not in the 6-yard box. I don't know about you, but I mean, I'm not a Spurs fan, but I'm sitting there going, "Oh, quick, get rid of it!"
It depends on the people you've got. I mean, I must admit, I find that when you're passing the ball to the big centre halves, they look more terrified than the fans. Like on the TV.
What they're all doing it now, because I don't know if you saw it. The club was doing the rounds. A goal that Airdrie scored. Weekend. Did you see that? No, they had umpteen. No, okay, you would have thought for about 5 minutes of the move. We've known for about 8 minutes.
Yeah.
For 5 minutes. The ball was just seemed to be just going back to be wee triangles at the back, but there wasn't one of the opponents touched the ball, and eventually it got put in the net. And to trot out what's now one of the oldest cliches in the books, if it had been Barcelona or Real Madrid, everybody would have been raving about it.
Yeah, there's one slight technicality on this, and Michael will be able to back me up on this. Michael, I'm a great player if nobody presses me and I can lift my head. I mean, it's just brilliant, isn't it?
A cultured left peg.
I was just about to say, you come up against good players who are on your case, you can't lift your head. You know, it's great if you've got Barcelona and you've got Dani Alves, you've got Puyol, you've got Piqué, you've got Abidal,
Yeah.
you know, in that great time, you know, under Rijkaard and Pep Guardiola, and of course the current Manchester City.
Yeah.
But for some teams, you're thinking, no.
Well, the verted fullback thing cracks me up. I must admit that the whole debate about that just bores me to tears. I mean, fullback questions and all that stuff. But playing them inside and all that stuff, I mean, especially in Scotland, a fullback in Scotland, you probably played it all your life. You're basically running up and down straight lines. The ball's always in front of you, or you're chasing back to kick somebody. It's pretty linear. But they're putting them in inverted fullbacks, and they get the ball at their feet with their back to the start of the action.
Yeah.
These poor guys are like ice balls, like muscles. What am I to do with this? You're asking them to turn.
Yes.
You're asking guys that have never turned. I mean, unless you run straight lines for 20 years, asking them to turn in a circle. And they're like, some of them are like the QE2, sort of shuffle around. But fair play, it's
the thing that you would say about him is that you would be more afraid of not doing it than doing it, because I can't remember what game, a League Cup game at Celtic Park, and then one time you heard them absolutely roaring was when someone passed the ball back.
Oh, aye. And it was really caught.
I like that about him.
And I think he was saying, you know, you will get caught. You will get caught sometimes. You will make a mistake, but I'm giving you my trust that you'll get better at doing it, at handle it. I think there's a confidence that comes from knowing you're given a bit of freedom to try and practice it, almost just don't make too many mistakes. But I think you have his confidence of the way he wants you to play.
And you know what? Because it's so silly now with the money down south, and you had that league table that you brought up in last week's show about who spent what, and obviously Chelsea were way at the top, weren't they? And you look at them in the league, you know, if you go back to the old part about Jim McLean and winning the league with whatever 14, 15 players, you know, then maybe the way Ange has, you know, got a hold of Tottenham Hotspur, you know, he's not spent, I know they've spent multi-millions as well, but, you know, they could be in the verge of something amazing. And for folk that are saying...
The timing of losing Kane was difficult. You know, losing right at the end of the window.
But you know what?
It affected the fans.
You don't even hear folk talking about him now, though. You know, and the other thing is that, you know,
I think you do miss an out and out.
For him getting in there and folk saying what a start he's made, but they can't keep that, they can't win the league and then like that. But then it was only 5 years ago with Leicester City.
Yeah,
well, why not? Of course they could.
Well, let's not forget also he's got a transfer window to come as well, so he'll be able to tweak things that he knows are, you know, missing, and he'll also be able to tweak it and say, as you know yourself, and I used to say to him, you know, how do the players react when you put up the team and some of these guys that have scored a hat-trick? I think James Forrest scored a hat-trick and he dropped him, and he was like, I don't care. I put the team up. I've no care for anybody's reputation. So he's still got transfer window to go. I really hope he does well. I think there will be that.
The reputation of Celtic players, do you think? I mean, there was all sorts of talk. Folk were assuming almost that the minute he went down to Spurs that he was going to take, you know, maybe one, maybe two, maybe three Celtic players. No sign of that up to September the 1st there, that transfer window. Do you think that'll happen, or is he now at a different level?
No, I'll tell you, there's no sign of it, because quite simply he goes in, he's assessed what he's got, he's had to look and say to himself, I can buy a higher calibre of player. That's the first thing. The second part of the flip side of that is, while he's assessed and been able to look at a higher calibre of player, Celtic have started firing out long-term deals to everybody. The last bit of their jigsaw is Hatate, so that they can box it off and think, well, if he does come back in 6 months, we're there. You know, we're going to get weighed in. I think the only thing, you'll like this, Michael, the only player we've got missing here, it would be absolutely fantastic. Talk about inverted fullbacks. Danny McGrain, talk us through this inverted fullback. You know, Danny, run up, beat 5 players, crosses it over, Ken Dalglish scores. He could play anywhere, and he was just absolutely magnificent. Sorry to get Danny McGrain in there. It's a bit like yourself.
I agree with Dan. I don't think he's at that market now. I think Celtic players on that market. Talking top 4, top 6 in England. I think Ange will be getting, a huge scouting department at Spurs who are coming in, firing names at him, and he is meticulous to go through. He did it at Celtic as well. He went through hundreds and hundreds of players that Celtic were watching, including, by the way, Kyogo, who's on that list.
Can I tell you who?
A few others.
I've got one that I think could easily make the journey over to that team that he has, and they would love him within 2.5 minutes.
Callum Slattery.
But it was on the tip of my tongue, but no. The boy
a good
is
season.
Maeda.
Yeah.
You think so?
Oh, all day long. I don't think Kyogo, because I think there are higher calibre, but I think for work rate alone, you know, in that flank, I think he could be one of those players that, you know, he would ideally fit into the Premier League because of his work rate, because of the way they like to high press.
Yeah.
You disagree, don't you?
He's slightly enigmatic, I think, because I don't think. I know you can't.
Because you think he's a goal scorer. I don't see him as a goal scorer.
I think he's a player that teams hate playing against, and you love having a teammate, but it doesn't quite have that. But then again, I keep mentioning if he didn't had that final ball and killer touch, he wouldn't be at Celtic. He would be up there because if you combine the two together, you've got a guy who earns 400 grand a week. Simple as that.
Well, can I ask you this?
So you don't get both.
Did you think James Maddison was absolutely the?
Were at Aberdeen?
Were you at Aberdeen?
No, I thought he was a quality player.
Yeah.
I thought similar to kind of like Ryan Christie.
Yeah.
That kind of. And Ryan
Christie's a great.
Who's now an established Premier League player.
Yeah. Is there anybody you think from the Celtic lineup?
I still think Hatate could be of interest.
Yeah.
And I think that's why Celtic are keen to get him on a longer term contract. As you say, it's an insurance policy, a safety net that if he does come back. I think Hatate's definitely capable of going up another level. Whether that's at Spurs or not, I don't know, but I think he's certainly one that would be of interest.
Yeah. And not in kind of current kind of form. He's not fit now.
He's not fit.
And he's maybe head is maybe turned in the summer, but he needs to now concentrate and get his head down and
I think
have a body of work for the next few months.
I think he maybe had his mind set in the fact that he would be at Celtic for 18 months or so and then make the next move. I think once you get your head around the fact it's not happening now, you need to just focus on what's in front of you for the next couple of months.
So what about he has to play before.
What about a guy that none of you have mentioned? Because when we had Pat and Evan on the radio a couple of weeks ago, he said that he reckons that Kyogo could play in any league in the world.
Well, the one thing I was going to say to you, and this is where Ange Postecoglou is very good, and various other managers who still, operate on that level of saying they can judge a player and they know what level he's at and they know what level he could possibly be taken to. You can't argue with Pat Nevin. Pat Nevin watches thousands of games, works on them, and if he says he sees something in him, it's like somebody who said on the radio the other day there, the boy Hoyland who signed for Manchester United. I think it was maybe Gary Lineker, I might be wrong, said, I like him, I can see why they signed him because he makes the runs. He's not getting it at the moment, but they can see what he does as a striker run and the runs he makes. So he might take a bit of time, but they see the qualities that he hasn't necessarily hit the ground running the way Haaland has, but Pat Nevin says he could play another level. I have every confidence that maybe Kyogo, Maeda and Hatate could do that. I mean, let's be honest about it. Callum McGregor could easily cut it in the English Premier League.
I actually thought that game at Wembley, the European Championships game, I know Billy Gilmore was excellent that night. I thought Callum McGregor that night had a fantastic game as well.
Yeah. There is another little piece here that I put. I might save it for another day now because obviously we're talking about managers and Ange Postecoglou and the whole situation where he's there and everybody's celebrating everything and analysing everything he's done, and there's no downside at the moment, and it brought me to the point of saying, the visionaries, the managers, everybody thinks Pep Guardiola's reinvented football, and I'm thinking, come on, give me peace, man. I can rhyme off 5 or 6 managers that were just geniuses who are forever etched in the history of the way football was played then, and it's still there right now. But it's such a long topic, I'm going to save it for another day. I know Michael had about 32 that he wanted to fire in there, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to bore your back end off and say to you, are you a fan of the new Champions League format which is coming in next year?
Well, I'm still doing through my HND and HN degree. I've still got a few assessments to work out to figure out actually how it's going to work.
You want me to explain it to you?
So it's a big all-encompassing thing, and you play with the 10 games you play next season, 5 home, 5 away.
36 clubs, Champions League, one big league table. It was 32 the last time. Divided into 8 groups of 4. So there's still going to be the draw at the start of the season. So
when do these games overlap with the Nations League?
Oh, God knows. By the way, the one thing that won't change, the one thing that will change, Tam, is nobody's dropping out of the Champions League into the Europa League or the Europa League into the Conference. If you are bumped out, you're bumped out, which I like. I like that part of it.
Right, well, hang on a minute. I didn't realise that because I was talking about this the other day. Now, Celtic and Rangers will forever to the Sunburns. They'll be vying for the title in Scotland. is there such a situation when these clubs, know their limits, that finishing second in the league in Scotland then, given this new setup, could almost be better in terms of progress? Because whoever goes into Champions League with the best football in the world, the Scottish champions, they're not exactly going to make great inroads. We're not expecting that.
The difference is you could earn up to 60 million.
So it's just about the money.
It's about the money.
But whoever finishes second in the league, I know, but whoever finishes second in the league in Scotland would realistically have a better chance of winning a European trophy.
Yes.
Well, they would still have to go. You'd still, at the minute, you would have a playoff route to the Champions League. In the current structure, you'd still have access to it.
Yeah.
You'd still have.
And I know it sounds daft, but you know what I'm getting at.
I think you would go out. I don't know if you drop in now.
No, you don't.
You're right.
There's no parachute at all.
No, there's no parachute.
You've got a qualification route into the Champions League.
36 teams, 4 pots of 9. Pot 1 has the title holders of the UEFA Champions League and the 8 clubs with the best coefficient. The champions of the top domestic leagues and the title holders of the Europa League will no longer be prioritised for pot 1. Pots 2 to 4 are ordered on club coefficient. Okay? So, I know there's a blank look in everybody, but
I'm struggling.
Basically what happens is they're going to get 8 to 10 games. Yeah. Minimum 8. Potentially 10 games. And then at that point, unlike the previous seasons, there's no drop down of teams from the Champions League to the Europa League. After the league phase, once you're out, you're out. So I like that. There's going to be one knockout round draw for the round of 16 onwards, with teams seeded based upon their final league phase position, and there's no country protection. I also like that. That means you're going to get Man City, Man United, situations like that. It's important where you finish in the table. The higher you are, the more favourable the knockout route will have, on paper at least. The number of clubs is going to be raised from 32 to 36, and the new format means minimum of 8 games. Most will play at least 10, and the same change is happening to the Europa and the Conference. It's actually based on the Swiss model. It'll increase from 32 to 36 teams, 8 group stage games, but only 6 in the Conference League. So the money's going to drop, but I think you'll still get a fair kitty from the Europa League. Yeah. I don't know how much money you'll get in the conference, but I think you'll get more than you're getting at the moment, because all of these leagues are being restructured to try and give clubs a greater chance of getting more money when they're in European football, because there's no drop down.
It's also like a league.
Well, I was just thinking, this is the fight back from the Super League breakaway that failed. This is the halfway house. This is the kind of compromise. They give the big teams 10 games rather than 6.
Yeah.
And they don't like it or lump it. They don't want to see Real Madrid against Celtic or Barcelona, Copenhagen. They want to see Man City, Real, Liverpool. I mean, that's what they want. So they get more of that, which is what the TV want, which is where the money comes from. And unfortunately, they don't. Like we're saying, the first team and second team playoffs and all that stuff. I don't care about Scottish football and that kind of level. It's all about the guys at the top and protecting them to avoid any more chance of breakaways. Absolutely. And it's a halfway house to get to that Super League status, because that will come at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. But the big problem here, for this country especially, and I think this is where Celtic right now are licking their lips on it, but Rangers will obviously have to keep a close eye on it and their strategy. If you get to the Champions League, Tam, and you're guaranteed 60 million, and you look at the revenue that Celtic have been taking in over the last few years, they could be winning this league till kingdom come, unless the whole structure changes. They will be out on their own in the next couple of years and untouchable by Rangers, unless Rangers can get investment from somewhere that allows them to wrestle that title away from them.
You're absolutely right. And as much as the Motherwell Rangers game at the last weekend there, as much as there was plenty of plaudits for Motherwell, quite rightly as well. You had Rangers being booed off the park, you had a player being booked for time waste. I've never seen that. When Motherwell's been to Ibrox, they were taking the ball into the corner flag near the time up. But ultimately, I need to hold my hands up and say that ultimately we didn't get a point. Rangers won the game as bad as they were. Celtic against Livingston. Celtic down to 10 men, losing their goalie as well. They were 1-0 up at the time. Livy couldn't come back. They ended up conceding another 2. And if you look away from just the games themselves or results themselves, the message that came out of that weekend for me is that just nobody can lay a glove on Celtic and Rangers. So for guys like myself who have been curious about what would happen if Celtic and Rangers did move elsewhere, if they were able to get into some other league somewhere, and I would like to see it happen in my lifetime, just out of curiosity.
Yeah.
And I think, oh, I wonder what it would be like. Would we go to the Irish League, or would it be no TV money, or would the league suddenly be great and different clubs win it, blah blah blah. I would like to see it happen, but that weekend there just told me that it's going to be a long time before you're ever going to get any sort of challenge to the big 2.
But this format for Europa League, Michael, and Conference League suddenly might offer a mouth-watering prospect for, teams who can say themselves it should be an Aberdeen, a Hearts, or a Hibs. But if somehow out of left field, St Mirren just maintained this great start to the season, if they suddenly got themselves into Europa League, now I'm just being hypothetical here, based on an unbelievable anomaly, they get into the Europa League and suddenly you're in a situation where they're getting 10, 15 million pounds. That changes the whole structure of it, and it puts them forward as a club that's able to beat the 7 or 8 below because they've got such a bigger budget.
Yeah, well, we've seen it in the last couple of years when Hearts got a big injection of cash. Not sure
they
it's spent particularly wisely,
they got an injection of cash, but they blew what I would say was a 9 million kitty. They lost to Zurich, they were a poor team.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? They could have had a £9 million kitty, Michael.
Yeah.
That would have transformed them for this season, where basically people are going, okay, you won a League Cup match, but can you win silverware with this squad that you've put together, and are you the man to take us forward, Stevie Naismith?
Yeah. The only thing is, sometimes the European campaigns are a bit fraught, aren't they? I mean, it's like, for all, I mean, you think of the money in the bank's funding, that's fine, but the games themselves, I mean, some of them are too many times in Scotland. Scottish teams have really suffered in Europe, and it's actually, you're watching it and you think, please be this be time. I mean, I think Hibs did a great result, and then they go and play Aston Villa and get spanked.
Yeah.
And there's so many. I mean, look, see now, every year we do these kind of things like greatest ever European shocks and all that stuff. And the list is like this. When you edit them down to like top 5 or top 10, because there's so many of them.
Yeah, but you're looking at it from a point of view, you're in the game that long, and because you're treated to a diet of Champions League and Europa League with Rangers and Celtic, and every maybe 15 years you get the odd final. But these clubs love it. They want it. I mean, if it's suddenly getting to a group stage automatically, they love the fact that they're playing games where you think, oh, it's a group stage, it's boring.
Supporters would love it. I mean,
Aberdeen fans, we've got a reporter working for us, and they went to Germany for Eintracht Kobe. His mates were absolute. They don't know about Fergie's years. None of that. They just want to go and have great times together.
I think it can be a sobering experience for Scottish clubs, even for Celtic. If you look at the Champions League results in recent years, absolute hidings off PSG and Barcelona and Real Madrid. Even last year at Celtic Park, that Real Madrid game, Celtic played well for an hour, and then you just sense that Real Madrid, if they've got to go through a few gears, that they can. I think it highlights a huge chasm, but I think there's two aspects to it. For the financial side of it, people rub their hands. You've got the accountants and the people behind the scene are just absolutely delirious at the money that comes in. And supporters, I think, are blind. I think supporters go into every game with an optimism that defies maybe current form or defies any evidence that they can go and take something, but I think they can be fairly sobering experiences.
Well, I, for one, although it looks complicated,
not very sobering. That's the one.
Yeah,
not for the fans. I mean,
I look at the new format, and I'm getting excited by it.
Is there a potential here for a few dead rubbers in this new format?
In the respect of games that you,
if they're in a big giant group, as they get towards the end of the group, is there going to be some, like as some would say, when folk argue against going back to an old 18 team top division in Scotland, they said, you could even get into February, and there was some games down at the bottom that meant nothing. Is there any potential for that?
Well, I don't think you can ever rule out the fact that there's games that are going to be meaningless at the end of a group stage, especially if you've got runaway winners. But I think the one key element here is the fact that once you get to knockout phase, you know that you could draw anybody. That's what I like about it as well. The fact that you've got 8 to 10 games and they've got it to 36, it suggests to me that, okay, the big five are going to have the cream. But you're going to get some humdinger games in it, Tam.
I think you let Michael complete his HND and you maybe come back here on the sofa maybe 3 months down the line and he can explain it all to us, because I'm still baffled.
Absolutely.
Presentation.
Is Bell College still open?
I know. There's definitely no, just for clarity, there are no teams then who will get into this new Champions League format who then are allowed into one of the lesser tournaments.
No, it's gone. I like it. So we shall see. Do you like it? You can give us your view on that as well. Subscribe to PLZ Soccer's YouTube channel. Of course, we've got more Straight Talks coming up. We've had the women's football show on a regular basis now with Kerry and Alison and special guests. The Journos every week we get a chance to have a wee argument, maybe a smile every now and then. And we will get Michael Gannon back here to explain this new format in detail. And we'll also get him sitting there with a brand new pair of Sundico gloves, just to give him a bit of confidence.
Is that us done?
We're done.
Are we?
Are you happy with that?
No, I thought we were going to get torn into all the cup games last night. Wow.
Yeah.
We'll save that for next week.
Yeah, absolutely. We're not going to get we're not get torn into any of these games, because he does that just to try and throw people on when it's recorded, what day it is, you name it. Anyway, apart from that, thanks to Tam and definitely to Michael and to Alison McConnell. If you get a chance, hit the subscribe button. From myself, Peter Martin, thank you for listening in the podcast and thank you for watching on our YouTube channel.